Yeah, my name is Gordon Van Dyke. I'm the Chief Publishing Officer and a co-founder of RawFury. I've been in the industry about 20 years now, and that started off in QA. And before that, I was a modder. And then I got the fortunate chance of working at DICE on Battlefield series, and then Paradox, and then founded RawFury with a fellow two guys that I worked with there, Jonas Antonsson and David Martinez.
Very well, very well. RawFury, it's we know the distributor very well. Lots of outstanding games in your portfolio, which is absolutely incredible, and congrats to that. How would you define the path of RawFury over the past 10 years? Sort of 10 years, right? 9 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years actually, January 6th.
Almost there.
Yeah, almost there. We've almost hit that kind of that golden moment, right?
The decade.
It's chaotic and opportunistic, I think, is, if I just summed it up briefly, that's how I would describe it.
Chaotic and, that's the
opportunistic.
That's the best way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how great games sometimes came out and are given birth, right? So, what were the biggest challenges over these years?
I think maintaining that hunger for to make a change, that passion to accomplish something more than just these check boxes, right? I mean, even in Steam, when you go in there to publish a game, there's check boxes, and it's giving you a little gamification, a little nice, cute green check box. Now you've completed this. These ones you haven't, and you say you have like this clear path, right? But that is always going to put you, when you follow those, you're the same as everybody else because we're all following those. And if you want to do something different, you have to put more energy. It takes more drive. It takes more time, and it's a lot of effort. And I think holding on to that hunger, even when you have some successes, starts to become more of a challenge, and things start to feel that they take more risk. And, should we do that? In the beginning, it's like, if we failed, well, we didn't do anything anyway, so what does it matter? No one will notice. And that, when you get to this size, you do notice. If something happens with RawFury, people can take it as an inflection of the health, or as a some kind of barometer of the industry. And so you start to kind of feel the weight of that pressure that you reflect and represent for a lot of people, even indirectly, that you're connected with.
For you personally, you worked, of course, in huge video games before RawFury. What's the biggest difference between working with gigantic companies, such as EA, for example, and now working with been doing over the past 9 years with RawFury? Is there a big thing, like you mentioned, like, this is completely different or similar?
I think overall, there is just a similarity, right? There are certain things that all of us, regardless the size of your company, from one person to thousands of people, you have to follow those processes, and they're in place to ensure some kind of consistency and to some threshold of quality level. And I think consoles are an even clear example of that, right? You have a much more rigorous certification process. In every game, it doesn't matter if you're Call of Duty, it doesn't matter if you're Balatro, it doesn't matter if you're Kingdom 2 Crowns, it doesn't matter, if you're a game that unfortunately no one ever heard of. We all went through the same steps, and we had to follow the same requirements that the platforms have to make sure that the games run well on their platforms. So I would say, like, those things are similar. I think there is a lot of similarity, but the one thing that I feel like I enjoy more is that creativity is easier to have a stronger voice in the scenario. So vision holders have a stronger voice typically by the nature of the structure. So when you're working with indie devs who are not taking their IPs, and that relationship is set up and structured to be more of a partnership, you get those things to happen more intuitively, and they just happen because you've created an environment that fosters that. And I feel like when you are working with a bigger company, they're investing a lot more money, typically as well. So that's another delta that is just, again, it's part of how it works. And, that will, by the kind of structure of that, not by the intent of people, create and reduce that risk taking. They're measuring things by man months. We never use that term, right? And so you have this chance to really innovate, and we should take advantage of that, because it is harder for those bigger companies, regardless the desire of everyone, from executives down to those on the floor. It's when you are in such a big game and you have so much things happening, those measurements need to be vetted way, way, way more rigorously. So I would say that's where we differentiate, but it's not that one is better or bad. We need those big games. We need those consistent ones. We need those ones that help us drive the technology that maybe on the indie side we don't necessarily need as much. At one stage, we probably will.
So you believe that there's more freedom in working in the independent game development rather than in AAA or other huge production?
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's this methodology that I've been cultivating over the last 10 years, is to kind of create a structure where there's a balance and a harmony, because that could also be a detriment.
Yeah.
Where you just go after things because you think it's cool, but you don't take into consideration the expectations that's on the consumer side. And it's words I hate to use because I feel like they're kind of ugly, but they really describe things well, and there's a reason that those terms exist. And it's like product is one of the ones that we tried to avoid, but it just created more confusion.
It's business.
What's the commercial? What's the commercial value of this, and things like that. These words that feel very, counterculture or anti-art, but they have a value, because at the end we are a commodity. We are art, but we are distributed digitally.
Yeah.
That's infinite copies of something. When you have infinite copies of something, you're not art in the traditional sense. You're not art in the way that, you're hang up in a museum and there's one Mona Lisa, and we'll debate if the one that's hanging is actually the real one and a copy. But
anyway, for another day.
Exactly. But that is kind of that is where it's at, right? It's like we are that, and we have to take those things into mind. And so what I've tried to do is there's 3 key roles that need to be in the discussions for everything that is in the backlog, right? Of creating that game, that piece of art, that product. All 3 things that it is. And so you need these individuals, and there needs to be separate people that discuss the priorities of that. And you have that person who's a vision holder, wants all the cool stuff, wants this new feature that they just really are passionate about. You need that to be part of that dialogue and have an equal voice. You need the commercial side, the product side. And there's a tiny bit of overlap, but it is like, we're making a game, it's going to appeal to this audience, it's going to have these expectations, these features have to be there, and they have to deliver. And then that vision holder is there to kind of create the thing that makes this game special. Why would I play this out of all the other ones in this genre? And if you have that person, you can also create a new definition of expectations as well. So that's obviously always a very critical role, but the others play an equal balance in that scenario, and it's timeline.
Yep.
All the stuff you're making, if you take too long, could have moved on. And so when you're working on those things, you know what people like now, but predicting 2-3 years, it gets harder and harder, right? It's like, Moore's law.
What's true today
is affecting us too, yeah. And so what I've worked really hard on is to kind of create that and what that does is if they all three are equal to the best of reality, you position yourself to be a unicorn. Doesn't guarantee it, but you give the best opportunity to achieve that. And that's what I'm trying to work with and get more and more into all of the games that we're working with. Because I feel like our biggest responsibility with indie games and devs is we get a lot of first-time developers. They come from completely different industries. Domekeeper, Renee, IT, created a profound game that's had such a massive impact. And getting to work with him and discuss design philosophy. I mean, he's just naturally gifted at it. But getting to talk to him and let him talk about those things and have that kind of, we had someone who was more commercial minded and was like, well, we need to change the art. And he and I care more about the gameplay and the cool stuff and the features. And that person had a super valid point. And if they didn't have that place in that discussion, we could have overlooked that. Like, who cares about the art? Man? The gameplay is amazing. This feature is.
So do you think that the job that you have and RawFury is kind of a guiding light as well for developers?
I hope.
Yeah, of course.
I hope so, and I want to. And that is the structure, is to make that even more tangible. That the developers that work with us feel like they walked away with tools and learnings, whether they work with us again or not, that they can carry forward, and then that they can, teach others. Like, I would love for all games to, be able to position themselves to find that success. It's kind of funny because like I get really annoyed when people are doing like a SWOT analysis. And they're like, oh, but this game has so many other titles. It's in this genre. Like, let's take FPS. That's the easiest example of just saturation of a market, right? But there are games that come out and just take over.
Yep.
PUBG.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, right? And I actually warned my friend at DICE before PUBG came out. I was like, what I'm seeing on the indie side and the ability to achieve things with tools now that back then when we were doing Battlefield, it took 300 people.
Yeah.
Now you can get it with 30 maybe.
Exactly.
And now you can even fewer people and you can achieve something that didn't seem possible. And it's people who have been able to take new tech, master those tools, and utilize those benefits. And they're just a bit ahead of people and how to master those tools. And then they disrupt the market. They put everybody back on their heels. And because those are all the ones who are chasing the data. And I want to be part of the group that is creating the data that everyone's chasing.
Yeah, absolutely. And very hard question. What makes an indie game a great game?
Wow.
Maybe an easy question. I don't know.
I don't think it is I don't think it's an easy question, but I do think it originates with the person I described as the vision holder. They need to have a really clear and more often in the indie space, a concise vision, right? They're not chasing this broad scope. They're not going in to a board meeting with executives and giving them a pitch to get green lit for a game because it needs to appeal to 100 million, 200 million players. And then you have such a broad spectrum that you have to appeal to. So you have to make a lot of compromises and being maybe more laser focused. And I think that's one thing that will make indie games great. If you look at Hyperlight Drifter, is one of my favorites, and from the indie scene, it's like great. It's very stays on point, keeps to that vision, the aesthetics, the lack of text, the lack of context, but using kind of these visual moments and these like with using music and audio to really just like pull you in so deep, and so I think those games really nail that. Binding of Isaac's, I think Kingdom also we've stayed really true to the core loop. Yeah. And just like we have that core loop, and talking about it out loud, I think I would take it one step further from that vision, but it is a vision of a core loop.
Yeah.
The more to the minute to minute, second to second. And as the indie scene's evolved and the audience is kind of grown, it also means that they're less forgiving. There's not, it doesn't matter if you're 300 or 300 people making it. The game has to hit certain quality levels and expectations. But that minute to minute is there. And then what's really going to help cultivate that bigger success is often that meta loop. What is that big picture that keeps me wanting to go through this minute to minute and second to second?
Yep. A lot of methodology behind that. RawFury, current projects that you want to highlight now and in the near future?
Oh, I almost just said one that we haven't announced yet. So our CMO would have just I wouldn't have been around for another interview maybe. But I would say Blueprints.
Yep.
It is one for the record books, and we have a lot of phenomenal games, and it's not to take away from how great they are, but some games can be just kind of generation defining, and I feel like Blueprints is a candidate to accomplish that. Proof will be after the release, but it is really a game that when we release it next year, it is something special. Everyone that plays it is like, whoa, okay, this is like, I think we've distributed maybe 300-400 keys, and everyone that plays it has quite a long play session.
Awesome.
And so the average in the back end on Steam, but with quite a few people, a good sample size, the average playtime is around 40 hours.
That's awesome.
We don't have any game that meets that. Our next best one is Kingdom 2 Crowns, and that's about 8.5 hours for context.
40 hours is amazing. It's really awesome. Wow.
And this is a person with the vision, right? This goes into someone and he comes from film, and so he was a director, so he knows about world building, lore,
storytelling, etc.
Just like the small thing one of the things that always stuck with me and blew me away. There's literal books and novels in the game that only exist in the game that are written about the world that this place exists in. It's an alternate, you could call it like an alternate universe, right? It's, I think, Batman the animated series, right?
Yeah.
Our time, it's kind of modern, but it's also not visually and stuff like that. So, and you have to go to the library, you have to kind of create the room for the library, and you have to check it out, and then you can read it while you're in the game, but it doesn't exist anywhere else.
That's awesome, really awesome. The congratulations to the developer. He must be fantastic. That's creating a whole universe, right?
Yeah. And then there's Post Trauma. It's also an amazing game. We were trying to release it next week, but we had to delay it, unfortunately. But that's part of the process as well. Even though our finance team wants to, just pull their hair out, and understandably. But yeah, we needed to delay it, and I think that one as well has a chance to really kind of capture that audience who really loves that genre that Resident Evil created back in the 90s, right, on the PlayStation 1. It's like, so I'm looking forward to that release as well. 2025 for RawFury is going to be quite interesting. I think we are finally getting those games that kind of took a bit of a slowdown from the pandemic that we've been seeing with a lot of projects. Everyone, I think, has had projects who have had to kind of wade through that process that are going to be coming out next year. And 2025 feels like it could be very prolific for RawFury, and what better time to have that happen than the 10-year anniversary.
Really looking forward to next year in RawFury. A final question, Gamescom Asia. We are here in Singapore. You are on stage with Sean Layden. how was the experience? How are you liking? Are you liking the event so far?
I came in with no expectations. I've attended TGS before, which is kind of its own entity in the world, in the universe. Bit Summit, which is a real big favorite of mine, that also is Japan, but I think it's one of the most blended and it's one of the last indie only focused consumer events. I think that's still that really has a big place and attracts a lot of gamers, and it's the best blend of East and Western developers. And I see, coming to Singapore now, it's like I see that happening here now. I see kind of this bubbling up where there's going to be a shift, whereas this region and the regions around here have been seen as an outsource region. I think that's going to disappear, and it'll be like in Europe where you have a blend. You have people doing outsource, and you have them doing their own stuff, and they're doing that to build a sustainable business model. And I'm positive you're going to see that more and more. And I think there already are ones that are doing it, but they're flying a bit under the radar, and it's going to change. And and I see this region as having a chance to learn. And in the past, people have seen it as a lot of replication. And I think, you go from that replication, but that gives you the tools of designing, and to where you start to cultivate those who can go from replication to innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Sean was a legend. So it's like, I was just honored and humbled to be on stage with someone who's,
defined the generation of gaming. He had a prolific impact on my life, which just sounds crazy to say, but he actually
did.
Millions of
millions.
players.
Yeah,
it's true. And he was actually a defining point in everything that is gaming today.
Yeah. So that was beyond humbling, and it was really fun to kind of dig in. I really had to work hard not to kind of feed into my personal curiosity. It's like, tell me about the decision to add analog sticks to the controller on the PlayStation 1 to literally change your controller.
But I think that we, as gamers and people who love video games, we actually like to know, because he was in the backstage.
Yeah, and it was really fun to get to chat with him. So, and I'm glad I feel like a lot of people came up to me and were really happy with. Because I'd never done that before, that hosted and moderated and kind of been the Jimmy Kimmel of the stage and interviewing someone, and trying to make sure that it was really important to me that the audience could take at least one, and ideally even more, things away from that they could add to their context and their tools to help them make better decisions.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
And thanks for having us this 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Gordon. Thank you.
Thank you.